Welcome to Spirit Outspoken, where we dive deep into the realms of spirituality, healing, and the beautiful chaos we call life.
From ancient traditions to modern practices, we are going to explore it all. Whether you're a newbie or a seasoned seeker, you're guaranteed to find something that inspires, challenges, and intrigues you here.
So grab your favorite beverage, find a cozy spot to curl up, and join us for Spirit Outspoken. What if the secret to unlocking miracles lies in the power of two or more coming together? Resonance theory suggests that when energies align, they amplify, much like the promise in Matthew 18:19. If two of you agree on earth about anything they ask, it will be done for them. Could this be the science behind the power of prayer? Was Jesus instructing us on how to pray to maximize outcomes? Today, we're exploring how the frequencies of faith and intention might create waves of transformation far beyond what we can see.
Hello and welcome to what episode is this, Ray? Let's see, 16,
18.
17, 18. Were you looking on your watch?
Yeah, I thought that was going to tell me something.
I was like, oh man, she's got her notes ready. Episode 18.
Episode 18, baby.
Honestly, it was easier when we were just saying like season 3, episode 3, because like, I don't know if I like can't count that high.
I know.
But we're getting up there.
We are.
And this one I'm just so excited about because I feel like you and I conjured up this theory on our own, like with our own little rabbit holes. And I don't know, I like so firmly believe in it.
Yes.
That I'm excited to bring it to our listeners.
Yeah. This is something that we've talked about behind the scenes many times and have inadvertently been practicing it in both of our own little ways over the years. And once we started learning more and educating ourselves, it was like all of a sudden we're connecting dots and going, oh my gosh, this kind of lines up with this over here. And then if we do this kind of sounds like that.
Absolutely.
And and then one day you messaged me and we're like, aha.
We have an epiphany.
Yeah.
But the thing is too, it's like one of our favorite genres, even like far predating the podcast, or like one of our favorite topics is how new research, scientific evidence, new theories reaffirm or help add clarity to biblical texts. Yeah. Right? Because like obviously Jesus was like some of the things that he was saying, you know, were so revolutionary. And obviously we saw the impact and how it just took the globe by storm. Mm-hmm. But now, you know, 2000 plus years later, having way more information, way more data, way more science, and not having people be so scared of what science and faith means when you add them together. It's not an either or. It can enhance and increase faith in a lot of situations. I don't know. This one just got me excited.
So why don't you start?
Yeah,
kind of
I'll
where
start.
Your line of thinking was, and we'll go from there.
Okay, that sounds great. So one of my all-time favorite scriptures, and one that I've hung on to dearly in times where prayer is needed, faith is needed, is Matthew 18:19. And that's, again, truly I tell you that if two of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. And I've often wondered why it's two people. And I didn't really think that much about it until recently. I just kind of knew the scripture and I was like, oh yeah, you have a prayer buddy and you're getting together with that person and you're being intentional in your prayer. Makes sense. Well, I was also, you know, doing our usual rabbit holing where I'm researching the latest metaphysical research or what have you. And I was watching a documentary and they brought up this concept of resonance theory. Mm-hmm. And we've talked quite a bit about how every physical and energetic thing that's on earth, seen or unseen, has its own frequency.
Yes.
Right? So that's something that is a key part of the resonance theory, right? Like everything has its own frequency, which we can measure and we've proven to be true. And resonance theory, in essence, is if you combine two like things, it amplifies. Hmm. So I had this epiphany like, oh my gosh, like, is that why it's two people? Like if two people are coming together, does it help increase the power of prayer? And based on our research, I feel like you and I confidently feel like
it does.
It does.
And I think it's so beautiful too, because you also have to remember that Christ was speaking in a time when there was no awareness of science and
That's right.
Even very basic concepts that we know of today, right? And so he wasn't able to speak on a really complex level. He couldn't go in talking about physics and all these different things. So
right.
he
He's
had
like,
to
have
put
you
it,
ever heard of quantum physics?
He had to put it in a way that would make sense to people
Right.
in that day and time. And
Absolutely.
I think that's what's so beautiful too, that he was able to come down and impart this wisdom on people, even when they were years before they were really ready to comprehend and understand it fully.
And his word is still unfolding.
Yes.
And it's like we're looking at it, like I said, 2,000 plus years later, and we're finding additional magic in it, which I think is like, this is why, like, the study of spirituality, there's no end. There's
That's why
no
it's so cool.
destination.
I feel like the more that I do this research, the more we look at science, the more we, go down our so-called rabbit holes.
Yes.
It helps me. It's like I take all these scriptures I've known for so long, just like you did.
Yep.
And it helps me see them in a whole new way, which
Yes.
is even more mind-boggling and proof of, I say mind-boggling a lot on this podcast. Have you noticed that?
I do too. I say
Mind-blowing,
mind-boggling. I also
mind-boggling.
say,
The last episode with telepathy tapes, I was like, oh, wow,
Mind blown.
how many times can your mind be blown?
Apparently
many.
Okay, so as we unpack this, I got like kind of tripped up on resonance theory because I had a hard time understanding it. So will you kind of talk me and our listeners through what actual resonance theory is? And then we'll talk about like how and why this could be related.
Sure. Well, keep in mind, I myself am not a physicist, but I'm going to do my best. So as some of you may recall, I'm a health coach. And so one of the things in my health coaching classes is they did a whole class one time on vibration and sound and how it impacts us as humans. So they talked about resonance in that. So the word resonance actually comes from Latin, and it is a term meaning resound. And in physics, resonance occurs when one object of the same frequency begins to vibrate and forces a second object into vibration. And that's when resonance happens, is when those energy waves, those frequencies sync up. And when they sync up, like you said, they amplify. So one really cool example of this that I always think of in my mind is on YouTube. You can actually Google this and maybe we sync it up so people can see it. But there's a video that shows resonance in action, and they take metronomes. So those are those little things that you see on top of pianos sometimes that keep the beat.
Yes.
They go back and forth.
Yes.
I was saying this to my husband, and he's like, what's a metronome?
Okay, what's really funny was when I was reading your show notes, I was like, a metrodome. I was
Did
like,
that collapse?
did they? I know. I was like, exactly. So I too, Ryan, shout out. I was also confused.
Yeah. So for those of you who weren't forced to take piano lessons like me, and I'm traumatized by the metronome. So on this YouTube video, there's probably 25 to 30 metronomes set out on this table, and they start them all at different times. So in the beginning of the video, they're all going and they're all out of sync, and it just sounds like a bunch of chaos and noise. And then slowly over time, they start syncing up. And before you know it, all 25 are in perfect rhythm together. So that is an example of resonance in the real world, right? These energies syncing up. And then as they sync up, they become amplified and louder. So it's a really good video to kind of like simplify it in your mind.
Like a physical representation of an unseen mechanism, right? Because it's all vibrational and it's frequency. But that's basically what we're applying to this theory and the one of prayer. It was funny. Like, so I actually asked ChatGPT, I was like, can you explain resonance theory to a kindergartner?
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because I was like, hey, I feel like that's where my education level is at. Because I've tried this 20 times now and I still don't understand it. I was reading all these different blogs and stuff. So the way that it explained it, I was like, aha, okay, I get it. So when you're like on a swing and you're pumping your legs and somebody pushes you in your flow and you just start going way up really high, really effortlessly.
Yeah.
That's also an example of resonance, right? Like where if it was out of sync, it would screw up your pattern and it would actually do the opposite. So when it's
stop
like
you from going.
adding to your flow, you just launch so much quicker, so much faster, and you get up so much higher.
Yeah.
Versus like the same exact action, but it's at a different point of your flow, that would have the opposite effect. It would slow you down.
It would slow you down. Yeah.
That was like a good way to think about it as well.
It is. I don't know. For some reason, this concept is a little tricky for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
So I think those examples are helpful.
I think so too.
One really cool thing, and this is on topic, but a little off, but I just thought it was so cool that I wanted to share it because it just talks a little bit more too about how interconnected we are.
Yes.
So the Earth has a natural frequency of 7.83 hertz. And it's referred to as human resonance. And NASA kind of describes it as the atmospheric repetitive heartbeat of Earth. And so when we look at the 5 brain waves, it just so happens that alpha waves, and those are the ones that are kind of right in the middle of that scale,
Yes.
are also at 7.83 hertz. So when we are out in nature, you guys, our brain syncs up with the natural frequency of the Earth. And you go into an alpha brainwave state. And in that state, you are calm but aware. Is that not beautiful?
That is beautiful.
And a testament to how not only are we connected, right, to Earth and meant to be in nature, and the importance of getting ourselves outside in nature, because it puts us in such a good state.
That's wild.
Isn't that cool?
You know, like if you think back, it makes so much sense. Like sometimes if you just need to clear your head,
Yes.
you know, you go for a walk and like literally you're clearing your head.
When my kids were little, and because I was a stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
And at one point I had a newborn and a 2-year-old, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. And when those kids would start, like sometimes in the afternoon, right? Like the
Getting
fussy
squirrely.
before dinner.
Yep.
Every time in the stroller around the block one time, and it was like a total reset. And I really think that's part of it. When we get outside and we get in nature,
Calms them down.
it just calms them down.
It's funny you mentioned that because my youngest, we've always said that, like, we're, you know, and we call it like, okay, he's getting squirrely.
Yeah.
Because it's around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, even now, he's 3. It kicks in and he like gets out of whack.
Yes.
He like starts kind of kicking and moving his body and he won't sit still. And would it be, if it was nice out, we would just get him outside.
Yeah.
And, you know, even when it's like 20 degrees, we still get him outside. He just calms.
Yeah.
down.
Almost immediately.
Almost immediately.
I mean, a couple minutes, then it's a total reset.
Total reset.
And I've noticed
I
too.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is
Isn't that
so-
cool?
And like, is that also related to like grounding and earthing and like how that helps kind of bring our bodies into...
Yeah, you know, some of the grounding has to do with ions from the earth that get absorbed into our body and help kind of like, you know, that's kind of a whole different thing. But I think it's just when we're outside in, you know, in nature.
In the atmosphere.
In the atmosphere.
Like the trees are giving off the frequency, the leaves, the grass.
Earth itself.
Earth.
I love how they call it the repetitive heartbeat of Earth.
Okay, speaking of heartbeats.
Yeah.
Did you know that if you meditated together as a group at the same time, they have found that your heartbeats.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And brain waves too, right?
Yes. So like, yes, individually, there's a heart brain. Nope. I pointed at wrong thing.
Heart brain.
Dude, if I only had a brain. Okay. Heart brain coherence.
Okay.
So when you're in a meditative state,
yeah,
you find coherence in your own body, right? Like there's that, like the Heart Math Institute did this whole thing about that. But as a collective group, they have found that when you meditate together, that your hearts sync up.
I think that's so cool. But that's another thing, you know, when we talk about how sometimes we just instinctively do some of this stuff, I try really hard when my kids are having big emotional responses to things to intentionally just sit and breathe as calmly as I can next to them. Like to literally try to change my energy in hopes that it will bring them down.
I have a word for that.
What is that?
A scientific word for that. It's called entrainment.
Oh.
Entrainment. It's a measurable effect of resonance. Okay. And that's where, like, that's what I was just referring to in terms of like the
meditation and syncing
or
up.
prayer, whatever. Like you're just together and you're focused on the same things. And it's almost like our bodies were created to tune into each other.
Which, again, we've talked about this in our season of love. We are hardwired for connection. It does not surprise me that our heart rhythms and our brainwaves would sync up when we're around other people. Like we're meant to do life together.
Like if our periods sync up, you like, for love of God.
That is so true.
Like I hope our
period
hearts
resonance. Damn it. Lord help my husband who has 3 women in his household. Someday it's going to be real fun.
I have a funny memory. I wonder if you remember this. The first time I was like, oh my God, Rachel and Ryan are funny. You were like, we were in this little hut, this warming hut at this chili bake-off. And we're like, oh, we're in this yurt warming up. And you're like, do you know that they used to have these period yurts where... Do you remember this conversation? Where all of the women who had their periods would go to their period yurt?
You got sent to your hut.
And like you and I were just chatting back and forth. And I was like, I would like a period condo in Miami. I would every month. I would like to go with my friends. I will gladly go. And just spend a week there. And Ryan was laughing so hard listening to us. And I like forgot he was even there. And I was like, oh, he's cool.
Yeah. He can handle the period talk.
Yeah,
he's good.
Exactly. Anyhow,
we should
digress.
Period. The red tent of the yesteryear is now the Miami condo of the new millennium.
I was like, think big. Think big.
Love it.
Ask and you shall receive. Okay, so to summarize, that's why we feel so strongly. Like we have some personal examples we want to share about this, but basically. Like the idea and the concept, and we're building off of, like, unbeknownst to us, we didn't plan it this way, but we're building off of season 1 and season 2, is that thoughts, emotions, and intentions vibrate at a certain frequency. And when those frequencies align, they amplify, right? And we've seen this in physics.
Yeah.
Sound waves is a really great example where they can measure it and explain it, where like, okay, when you have a similar frequency in phase, so like the peaks and the troughs match up, the sound doubles.
Yeah.
It amplifies.
Okay.
But on the flip side, if they come together and they don't match out, they literally cancel each other out.
Oh,
yes.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So they have proven it, and physics has seen this with sound, right? And sound vibrates. We know that. Thoughts vibrate. All of these different things. So that's like the premise of our thesis.
Cool. Yeah.
It's so cool. Have you had any personal experiences of resonance, or even like, I don't know, a situation where you walked into a room and you just felt like you were on the same vibe? I don't know.
When I met you. What's that?
Duh. Vibe checks out, baby.
Seriously, right away.
So I think like the best way for our listeners to maybe think about this creatively and apply this to their own lives is like for us to talk about it. Have you ever experienced a situation where, the vibes or the feeling or the energy in the room affected you physically?
Yeah, there's a couple. So one that comes to mind right away is always, pretty much every time I'm in church and there's music for me is so powerful. And when I'm in a church congregation and we're singing a hymn all together and the word, like, there is just something that I end up getting teary. I mean, I'm sure people think I have major problems because it's like tears will just,
no, you get emotional.
I get emotional. I feel it. So it's like I can feel this in my spirit and soul of this like intention and worship and everything. So that's a big one for me. And then I remember I was on a women's retreat, and at one point we were going around, and at the table, there was a table of like maybe 6, and everybody took turns praying for each person around the table. And when I was the recipient of it, I can't even really describe it. It was just warmth and power and peace. And it was just like all of these wonderful, beautiful things going on inside of me where I felt like the intentions and the well wishes and the love.
You felt it.
I felt it.
Wow.
In a really cool, tangible way that I don't think I really ever had.
I have goosebumps right now.
Yeah, it was a really cool. So it's like we went around and all of us talked about something in our life that we were struggling with. And then the leader kind of went one by one and prayed for each of us.
That's incredible.
And it was really cool. Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like and if we think back, right? Like there are so many times where you physically feel the energetic of something.
Yes.
I mean, like even if it's like,
or yoga class.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You can feel that sometimes.
Yeah.
I interrupted you.
No. I was just going to say like, it works both ways. You can feel good energy and you can feel negative energy, right? Like I've had situations where, I don't know, someone walks into a room and I'm just like, ooh, I don't like those vibes, you know? And it's like you could almost feel their heaviness.
Yes.
Right? But on the flip side, you walk into a room and there's camaraderie, there's good collaboration. I mean, instantly you walk into a great setting, right? It's like you can feel it.
Yeah.
I have a couple that I can share. A couple of them are recent, actually. So I don't know. When did I first text you about this? Like sometime in December.
About
this resonance theory and the
yeah,
it was
Christmas time.
Yeah, Christmas time.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of sickness in our house.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So my oldest was super, super sick. Actually required him. He went to the ER twice over Christmas, and the second time he went to the ER, we had a cute little ambulance ride to the hospital where he needed to be admitted and put on oxygen. And I won't bore you with all the details, but his oxygen just went super, super low to a scary degree.
Scary.
And we were supposed to be flying to Florida the next day. So we talked to the ER. We obviously talked to the doctor who was with us when we were admitted. And her guidance was like, he'll at least be there 2 nights, maybe 3, plan accordingly. Because we're looking at her like, all right. It was also funny too. She was like, man, you guys know your way around a hospital bed, don't you? Because I was like, that's
Pulling
beeping.
things,
That's,
yeah.
yeah. And it's like, all right. So at that point, it's like, I hate to say it, but like no sweat. We know what a hospital admission is like.
Yeah.
He doesn't have cancer. We'll just get him to where he needs to get to. But there was some logistics involved. We have 2 other small kids at home. Supposed to fly to Florida the next day. And, you know, my poor kid is like, please tell me I can still go to Florida. Please, please, please. So I'm just like, oh, geez. All right. We gotta get there. So before we even got in the ambulance, I said, all right, Charlie, we're going to pray. So we knelt down and my oldest son really wasn't feeling well. He was kind of like in and out of sleeping. And I reminded God of the scripture. And I said, when any 2 people are agreeing on something, it shall be so with our Father in heaven. So like, that's the scripture. I'm speaking it out loud. Charlie and I are in agreement that my oldest son will be healthy quickly. His health is imminent and the physical reality just has to catch up to like what we know to be true. And then what we did is I kind of walked the 3 of us through a meditation, like a visualization of what we expected. And I said, all right, we're picturing my oldest son, vibrant, healthy, playing football on the beach in Florida. And I visualized us walking down the path we've walked down a million times.
Yeah.
And I could see throwing the football with his oldest cousin, really throwing it to his little brother. And I just held on to that thought. So we get admitted to the hospital and, you know, the oxygen's fairly low, you know, like it's like they're cranking it up. Set the expectation it's going to be at least 2 nights, probably 3. So we switch our flight to Monday and we say, okay, that's fine. And what's really funny, and it's happened a couple times in my life, I'll just be like, yeah, okay, we'll see about that. You know, not like in a flippant way, but in my mind, I'm like, I don't know. I'm believing for faster. I'm also surrendering to the fact if we're here for 3 nights, we need to be here for 3 nights. So I have let go
of the expectation
and the outcome. And he has a good night. Oxygen's still in. He still wakes up. Oxygen's hovering in the 80s. So they're like, he really needs to be like 95, 96 on his own for us to feel comfortable. So she comes in and she's like, yeah, you guys, definitely another night at least. And again, we were like, well, we'll see. We actually moved up our flight and we like changed it like 10 times. But it was sort of like, we're just going to kind of blow in the wind, I guess, and go with the flow. And I kid you not, round 2, his oxygen just started going beep, 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 jumped up. And she comes in and she's like, well, I don't know. We need to make sure it could stay that way. And they took him off oxygen and it only improved from there. And we were on a flight to Florida the next morning at 6 a.m.
It was crazy.
It was crazy.
Because I was talking to you like, on and off throughout this.
Yes.
And it was like, 3 days, but we're hoping for the best, but they're telling us 3 days. And then they tried to take him off, but it started dropping again. So he had to go back on.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you were like, hey, we're going. And we're going to Florida tomorrow.
Yes. Yes. And like what I've realized time and time again is do not let the doctors dictate to you how it's going to go. We love doctors. We listen to our doctors. But like, in my mind, like they do not control the spin of the universe.
Right.
They do not control the hairs on my kid's head. Like I believe God does.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I respectfully am like, okay, cool. But I'm just going to do my thing. And another thing that happened 2 weeks later was, my second oldest still in treatment for leukemia. The way it works is when you're in treatment that any temperature, you go right to the ER.
Yeah.
Because they want to make sure they have to do a blood culture to make sure that his port's not infected. Because that could be dangerous. So it's the night before we're supposed to fly home from Florida.
Of course.
So we got a nice little bookend.
You guys and flying.
Yeah,
and,
we had a good little bookend situation going on where right before bed, his temp started to go up. So lo and behold, Charlie shakes me awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sleeping with our youngest in another room. And he says, I gotta take him to the ER. He's over 101. So takes him to the ER.
Stressful.
Super stressful.
Yeah.
Does his thing. I immediately text Charlie when he's in the ER. Same thought. Okay. 2 or more people agree. We're agreeing. We're believing that he's going to be fine. All is well. So they do their thing at the ER. He wakes up, feels like shit. His temperature is like almost 103.
Oh.
So we're like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? Wakes up the next morning, 98.6, bounces out of bed, fresh as a daisy.
So crazy.
And I'm like, I believe in this stuff, but like,
to see it happening.
Sometimes you're just like,
oh, I guess,
wow,
wasn't expecting it that
did
fast.
that happen?
Yeah.
And fully recovered, no complications, like no issues. Very quick, 12-hour recovery. So
an immune compromised child because isn't he immune compromised because of
his immunity is not where it needs to be.
So for him especially to bounce back like
100%.
Yeah,
exactly.
But like honestly, my biggest lesson in this has been during your son's cancer diagnosis because I know there were so many of us praying and sending intentions and doing all of that. But I mean, I just think there were so many times where you would give me specific things to focus on.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's almost, I don't know, there was something about it and you would be doing the same intention. I would be doing the same intention. I can't describe it. I just felt like there was power in that.
Absolutely.
Like I truly felt it. And that I think you need to really get into what you and Charlie did during that time because it's such a testament to all of this. And it's helped me learn a lot about using intention for the health and wellness and healing of others and ourselves.
Yes. So another instance, like I'm just specifically thinking about 2 people.
Yeah.
So Roman had a very strong and dangerous reaction the first round of chemo that he got. And he ended up in the ICU because of it. There's a whole nother story I'll go on in a different episode. But in essence, the second time he's stable, he's out of the ICU. It's time for his second round of chemo. And Charlie and I are like, oh my gosh, we're scared now. Because like the first time it was terrifying. So we decided to change our mindset. And we were not enacting the scripture in essence, we were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
We both woke up really early. The chemo nurses started coming in. They were doing their checks. And I went to Charlie and I started crying. I said, I'm really scared. And he was like, okay, what can we do to change our mindset? So I had remembered a documentary that I had seen probably 2 months before Roman was diagnosed. And it was around the power of healing and your mind and healing. And this woman who was diagnosed with cancer, she had a coach that was kind of like walking her through different mindsets. She was getting chemo, taking all the direction from her Western doctors, but she was also exploring Eastern techniques as well. And spiritual techniques.
Yeah.
So the guidance was, all right, we're going to make chemo our friend. Picture it as little piranhas coming into the body, biting up all the cancer cells.
Yeah.
And it's just biting away. So I'm telling Charlie this visual and he goes, okay, I love it. Like, let's picture them as like cute little guppies. They're coming in.
Yeah.
It's like, let's make it our own. It's like in our kid's body, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, all right, they're cute little guppies and they're just eating at the cancer. And then they just wash away with the tide. So I was like, oh, I love that.
That's a good one.
So we would visualize that as he was getting the chemo. We would both do it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And after he was in remission, he still has to go through treatment, the 2.5 years of chemo. I was like, all right, well, the cancer's gone. So what is my new visualization for chemo? And I would literally picture cute little bursty hearts going through the IV line, going into his body and just filling his body with hearts and just kind of bursting and doing what they need to do and then just disappearing. And I kid you not, he did not lose his hair for 6 months.
He did not. No.
He did not lose his hair for 6 months. And his doctors said, okay, he's going to lose his hair. Just heads up. 2 weeks, it's going to be gone, maybe less. And Charlie's like, oh, should we shave his head? I was like, I don't know. Like, first of all, I was like, does he have to lose his hair? I remember having that thought. And I was like, that sounds crazy. I'm not going to say that one out loud.
Yeah.
But didn't lose his hair. I mean, it changed. It thinned. It turned a crazy color, orangey red.
It turned reddish.
But he had hair.
He did.
For the first, and like, it didn't fall out until 6 months into treatment. And his hair started growing back a month later. So he was really only without hair for like
very short amount of time
out of 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Which was wild. And now it's like back and thick and beautiful. But I believe in this stuff because I've lived it.
Yes.
I've seen it.
Yes.
And like, I'm even the person that's like, I'm doing this stuff because I believe in it. And then it happens and I'm like, dude, did you see that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be surprised. I want to be like, God, yeah, thanks. Like, high five. I knew it was going to happen. But like, at the same time, to live these miracles out is wild.
It can even be normal day-to-day stuff that
Absolutely.
You can use it for. So, for example, I have one child who struggles with anxiety, and she had a terrible experience one time at the dentist where they were doing some fillings and she was telling them that she could feel it. And they were like, no, you're fine, and kept drilling. So obviously
Can you imagine?
No. And I was not there to be her advocate. But anyway, obviously she's terrified, right, to go back to the dentist. So
who would it be?
We've switched dentists and she had to get a filling, and the poor girl, the night before, she was crying in bed, saying that she's not going through the door. She's not going to do it. Like, absolutely terrified. And the next morning over coffee, Ryan and I sat down and just had a moment of, okay, we need to pray for her today because this is a big day. And we just, and I took time on my own even later that morning to just visualize light around her, as she's going in, and just peace for her during the process. And I kid you not, the night before, she's in bed telling me she's going to refuse. And trust me, this kid will refuse if she doesn't want to do it.
He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it.
So,
I got one of those too. I know the vibes.
And the next day, she did awesome. And I also just released it. I was like, I don't need to fix this. Because sometimes as moms, I feel like I have to do something. And I just, kind of released it, trusted, brought in all the good intention and energy I could. And the next day she walked in there like a champ, and she had no issues, and she had a positive experience. And I kind of was floored. And I was like, wow, this really does work.
Isn't that amazing? And like, here's the thing. you did do something.
Yes. Yes, you're right. You're
you
right.
did do something, and you did something that was in your control that we're now seeing as
evidence of
it, like real life examples, but also physics. We're seeing it with sound. We're seeing it with theories around resonance, how they've been able to measure heartbeats syncing up during meditation, right? Like, you probably did the most powerful thing you could have done.
Yeah. Which is also an act of release in a way. That's how it felt to me. Because like I said, so often, especially as moms and parents, we feel like we want to fix it or we want to do more and then it just actually makes it worse sometimes when we get involved. And so this felt so wonderful and beautiful to be able to contribute something.
Absolutely.
And feel as though I'm contributing and helping in some way, but also just release it. Like, I'm going to allow God and the universe and everything else to do its thing. And I'm going to step back and just trust in this process.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because like, I find that really empowering too. It's almost like the surrender and the releasing is the ultimate form of trust and power and like
faith.
I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Love it. And next week, we're going to go into the power of group intention. And you guys, we have some crazy experiments that this woman has done over the years involving group intention and how it impacts and affects people, nature, the world, everything.
If you think like two people are crazy and the outcomes that we've talked about today, if any two people, wait till we get to 4, 6, 8,
hundreds,
thousands. I mean, wait
till
you see what it can do for our health, for the collective. It's incredible. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening today. We hope you enjoyed this topic as much as we did. Let us know your thoughts. Comment on the podcast. Send it to a friend or a loved one who needs a little bit more resonance theory in their life. Talk to you next week.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you're ready to take your spirituality to the next level, be sure to check out our website, spiritoutspoken.com. There you can download free educational resources, read our latest blog posts, and join the Spirit Outspoken community.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Spirit Outspoken to stay up to date on news, happenings, shenanigans, and all things Spirit Outspoken.